Welcome to today's session. And then today's agenda is to go over exception handling, and we'll get familiar with exception handling and how to do the exception handling in Python. If you're coming from a programming background, you must have heard about try catch block, try catch, and finally there are blocks in the other programming languages. So similarly in Python we do have try, but instead of catch we do have like an exception, except, and then else, and finally. As like in the for loop we do have else, in the while loop we do have else. In the try block also we can actually use else. I'll just let you know what is the order and which one we should actually use, what are the combinations allowed in Python programming. So we'll just go over it. So let me take you to the previous section where we have discussed about how the error or exceptions gets raised during the runtime basically. Once we are done with the source code, then we are actually going to execute it. But during the execution, what happens? The compiler is definitely going to check if there are actually any syntax related errors, or if there are any syntax related errors, compiler is going to flag it. So that is kind of syntax error. Similarly, if there is no syntax error, then what happens? Then the bytecode will be generated, and then the bytecode will be sent to the Python virtual machine, or we can call it as actual PVM. When the bytecode is generated and then it gets executed in the PVM, let's say I have mentioned the input function to take the input from the user, or I have mentioned some libraries. Think about the database operations we have done in previous sessions, right? So MySQL connector you need, or you need PyMongo for connecting to the MongoDB and all these libraries, or you need system libraries. Some of the libraries are actually system libraries, some of the libraries are actually external libraries. Explicitly you need to install it. Some of the libraries or packages are actually by default available with the Python installation basically. Okay, so now we can actually import it. Then the libraries will be imported. We can actually take the input from the user, then the code is actually going to get executed. Now, when the code is getting executed, it may throw some errors. For example, I'm actually taking two inputs and I want to submit. Let's say 10 and 20, the requirement is to get 30. But what happened, I've just given one input as string, the other input as actually number. Then in that case, neither concatenation is going to work, or neither addition is actually going to work. So that is how so that is how it is actually going to uh, get executed in the runtime, and if there are actually any errors, it will be raised as well. Now the question is, if you're getting an exception, then what happens? Or errors, what happens over there? How many types of exceptions are actually there in Python? We'll spend some time to understand documentation. In the Python documentation, we do have lot of information. This is like one-stop solution. You can actually get information about anything. So let us spend some time here to understand the hierarchy of exceptions, like what kind of exceptions are actually there. If you look at the exceptions, whatever we have experienced so far, like name error, index out of bound, then we do have now file not found, or the permission is denied on a particular file, or let's for example, we are opening the file in the read mode but trying to do some write operation. We cannot do that, right? So now look at here, like what are the information available, and what is the hierarchical information about the exception. So guys, if we go ahead in the extreme down of this Python documentation, you can just Google it, exception handling in Python or exception hierarchy in Python. You'll be redirected to Python documentation. In the Python documentation, we do have documentation for various versions, starting from 2.7, 3.5, 3.6. I'm currently using 3.10, but 3.11 is also available. So we can also jump into like 3.10 and check the documentation as well. There is no major changes in this section as well. Okay. So if I'm going to the exception handling, the extreme down of this particular page, here you can see the exception hierarchy. In the exception hierarchy, we could actually visualize it. I did not actually spend time to make it more visualized, but again, we can actually understand from this hierarchical structure also. It is very simple and straightforward. Here, if you look at the base exception, we do have generator exits, keyword interruptions, system exit, and there is something known as exception. So exception is derived from base exception. Okay, under exception, how many types of exception we are having? Consider about arithmetic errors. The arithmetic errors can be floating point related error or divided by zero error, zero division error, right? Or overflow error. Okay, let's say similarly EOF error, buffer error, name error. Okay, and then we do have index error, index out of bound. That is for nothing but lookup error. Like when we are actually looking for any key or value, key is not present, index is not present, so index is out of bound and all these things. So you can, those errors are actually nothing but lookup error. For if I'm going to do this, think about I am having a list. My list equals to 10, 20, 30, and 40 list of numbers. Now print early enough. Hope you remember all these functions or methods. My list. Now look at here. So it says the length is 4, but the index starts with 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, if I'm going to do like this, print my list of 5. 5 is not present. Now, what is going to happen? Let us see. What is going to happen here? You can see it here. There is an index error. We are looking for some value. That value is nothing but in this case, you can see this my list is the list. Index is 5. We are trying to print this. We are getting index error. Now going back here, you can see this is nothing but index error. Similarly, if I go ahead define a dictionary, or our favorite dictionary name is info, and which will have Subbu's information. Here you can say name, and I do have location. Here I have Bangalore. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to print here 3, but in this case I'm just giving print info of what, info of, I'm just giving subject, for example, something like this. Now, if I'm running this program, here you can see that is type error, dictionary object is, oh, okay, I see. So, label, I do this mistake always. So it should be something like this, Control Shift of 10. Now here you can say key error. So this key error is nothing but lookup error. This lookup error is part of exception. This lookup error is actually part of exception. Okay, so now we have experienced index error and we have experienced key error too. Okay, similarly, if I'm going here and let me fetch out this error, I just give a name here. If I'm running this program, it should actually run fine. Here you can see 440 and Subhasis. I don't have any variable named company. I'm just giving company here, like print company. Look at here, this program is very small, one list, and then we have gone through list, one dictionary. Right now we are actually trying to print the value of company, there is nothing. Company, we don't have actually anything in the like in the name, any variable name company here. So we should actually get a name error over here. Now here you can see name error. Name company is not defined. From where it is coming, like name error is nothing but here, right? So exception, it is called name error. So unbound local error. So, okay, these are the name errors. Similarly, we do have like OS errors where file exists error, file doesn't exist, file not found, permission related errors, timeout errors, anything. So these are actually nothing but various exception types. Now the question is, whenever this exception is actually occurring, let's say for example in this case, it is printing 440 verses and then printing like a name error. What if I'm just executing like a company over here at the beginning or just after the list? I'm just giving like my company. Now run the program. Here you can see as soon as the error is encountered, the program is terminated. For example, line number 1, this is where we are actually defining the list. Line number 2, we are printing the length. And line number 3, we are giving like a print company. Here you can see it says like in a company name error, and 4, 5, 6 is not getting executed. This is the normal, or like the normal execution, or you can say normal execution flow. If error is encountered, then the system is actually going to stop the execution. Now the question is, we don't want to actually stop the execution. Think about a real-time scenario. We are having like the share market information. For example, something like this, I can say we do have stock information, um, for a particular stock, or like for a couple of stocks, and that information we got it from our national stock exchange 15 minutes ago. We can get it real time too, but assume like every 15 minutes we are actually calling the NSE API, and then getting the information, or Yahoo Finance API and getting the information. There is no guarantee that the API will be available 24/7, but these days the systems are actually pretty stable and high availability is there everywhere basically. So we are not going to experience this kind of error in the real time. But think, we do have a fallback logic. If the API is not available, we have a local DB where we have like all share trading informations. Now, if there is any failure in the API call, it should actually pull the data from the local storage, basically, or DB or a file or anything, a JSON file or anything. Now, how do we handle it? Programmatically, how do we handle it? Let's say, for example, we are trying to invoke the API is not available, the system is actually, the program is going to fail. With exception, okay, so and so site is not available, or like the API is not available, 404 error or something like that, we can actually get some error message and the program is going to terminate. But how do we handle it? To handle that, we should actually know how to deal with the exceptions. Exceptions basically, it could be like here name error, index error, key error. All these are actually very small errors. But think about in real time, when you are actually dealing with huge amount of data, you can encounter like a lot of errors in the real time. So how do you handle it programmatically? We are going to learn. So to learn the exception handling, we should actually get familiar with like a few keywords that is known as try, except, else, finally, and then I'll just tell you like how to raise the custom exception using raise exception, how we can actually raise exception, or we can say like a custom exception too. What is else, and then what is finally. Let me go back here again. I've just documented it like just very quick information, quick and short information. We do have like try cats. Sorry, I could have copied there. Yeah, so let me put it here. Okay. So we do have try block. In the try block, what we are actually going to do? The piece of code which is going to do the like which is needed for the business logic or your business logic or your program, or you can say the executable statements, you should actually put it in the try block. Once we put it in the try block, then we can have the other blocks. Let's say, for example, if we do not have try block in any program, we cannot use any of this. But if we are having try block, we can definitely execute like except, else, and finally. You can ask me, is else and finally mandatory? We need to specify always. The answer is no. We don't really need it. Now you can next ask me, what are the combinations? Like whether we can actually use try except finally, try except else, or try else finally, like what are the combinations? So the combinations, the allowed combinations, what we can actually execute is here. Like in a program, we can either use like, let me put a number here, we can use try and except, or we can use try and finally, or we can use try and try except and else. We can use multiple accepts, try, accept, accept, and accept, or we can have like in a multiple try, accept, basically multiple try blocks. Okay, try and accept, or finally, or else blocks. We can definitely have all four. Let's say try, accept, else, and finally. So this is all theory part. Now let us go ahead and understand. We'll write a very basic program to understand how to use try and accept. Think about a small program here. I'm just going to write a program right now. It's the first program on exception handling, Python file, exception handling, example 1, Python file. Now I have a program like this, print company. Print company. Now look at here, Control Shift F10 to execute the program. It is saying like a name error. Now I don't want the program to fail. If the variable is not defined, it should not generate all these messages, because I want to generate some meaningful message, or I want to set the company value to like something like let's say for example, I'm just giving like the company value to Google, or the company value to Walmart or TCS or something like that. Okay, so now here you see how we can actually do that. To do it, we can definitely use a try block. This is very easy. As like an if, we do have a colon. For also we do give colon. Similarly, try also we should actually give a colon here. Now, here what I can actually say, except, in the except block, nothing. I'm not specifying anything. Print, welcome guest. Think here, if company is not defined, we don't want to throw any error. Name company is not defined, but our requirement is to like the print welcome guest. If I'm running this program, look at here. What it is saying, welcome guest. It is not throwing this company is not defined. But ideally, what we should actually give here is our custom error message. Company is not defined yet. Now running this program, it's saying like the company is not defined yet. Now the question is, that's all fine. This is a very small program. It is working fine, but it is not terminating. That is good. But what if the company is not defined, I want to set up like the company value to something here. Let's say I'm just going to define the company value to, I'm just giving Google India. Okay, so now look at here. I'm just giving like a company value as Google India. Now here I'm just company is not a defined. I'm just going to do one thing. Company is not defined, and then resetting the company value. Now here I'm just saying print welcome to company. That's it. Now running this program. Here you see, if the company is not defined, the program is not failing. We are handling this explicitly, right? In the try catch block, you can actually see it. Think about the business logic. Calling an API, we can actually put the code here. In case of any exceptions, the fallback logic should be actually under the exception. That is the reason why we are actually using the except block, okay? Try and except block. Now, think about you want to actually handle if it is not defined, you should have some piece of code. If the index error, your requirement is to like have something else basically like business logic basically. How do we do it? How do we like handle specific exception? In this case it is name error. How do we capture that? So now let me write another program. Now new Python file, exception handling then one, sorry, two. Okay, so now go ahead here. So I'm just removing this part. I know. Okay, let me start it from the beginning. Okay, so it is done. Now I'm running this program. Here you can see name error. Now in the previous program, nowhere we have mentioned like name error. Now here we are going to do something. Now look at here. I have try block. In the try block, I do a print statement. In the except block, except I'm just saying like a name error. Then print company is not defined it. So now I have another what like list, for example L1, and here I have okay, I can actually do it here, or okay, anywhere you can actually do it. There is no hard and fast rule that we should actually define at the beginning. So 1 2 3 I'm just giving 1 2 and 3. Now print, I'm just giving here I do have a try block here, and print L1 of 5. Definitely it should give us some error message. So what is that error message? We will see. What is that error message? It should actually print us index error. If you want to try that, we can actually give this actually index error. Index error. Here you can see. Just type index, you can see index error. And if I'm giving this index error, print next element in this list, then I can specify, hope you remember alien method. Alien is going to give us the length of this particular list. So, okay, so try to test our code. Here what we are doing, in the previous example, we have used only except. It can actually accept, it can accept all the errors, like it can handle all the errors. But here, in case of name error, this code is going to work. In case of index error, this piece of code is going to execute. Okay. So now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is not throwing any error. Name is, this is not defined, but we are not getting name error. We are getting company is not defined. Now, whenever we are actually dealing with list and using a index which is not valid, we are not getting index error because we are explicitly handling the index error and printing maximum elements in the list is actually 3. Now, the question is, can we have one try? Let's say if your requirement is to one moment, if your requirement is to handle this error differently, so what I can do, exception handling, I can give it here, see Python file here, we go here and then we can do one thing. I'll just put here like list one over the try block. Then here we see we can move the print statement here, and we can also have something like this. It is this is the same program, but we are actually doing it differently. What we are doing, our business logic is print the company and print L1, but here the second part, second piece of code is actually going to throw like index error. The first code is actually going to throw name error. Now, if I'm running this program, what is going to happen? Let us see. We got company, guys. This is pretty much interesting. You should understand the flow, like what it is going to do. Company is not defined. The company is not defined. So in this case, name error will be raised. The flow will move to respective except block. For example, look at here. It is small cassie. Print company is not defined. So what happened? The name error, it is going to execute name, sorry, this block. So company is not defined yet. So it is not at all printing L1 of 5, or it is not at all printing this one, right? Because this is again a error condition. We do not have like 5 elements here. But in the first case, whatever the error messages are actually coming, it is actually handling like this. Name error or index error, it is actually handling like this. Okay. So line number 3, error detected. Then the control is move back to line number 5. The line number 5 is like the respective name error. Now, I'm just going to define company equals to, I'm just giving here like Walmart. Now company equals to Walmart. In this case, the name error will not be raised because we have defined like a company equals to Walmart. Now, the code is going to work this way. It is going to print Walmart. Then it will try to print L1 of 5. L1 of 5 is going to raise index error, and we are going to get max element in this list is 3. Okay. So now if I'm running this program, here you can see Walmart max element in this list is 3. What if I have a different program? Let me, or in this program, I'm just going to do this. Okay, let me try to write another program to make you familiar with this flow. Exception handling for. Here we go. And I have like L1 of 3 or L1 of 2. I'm just doing here L1 of 2. So in this case, no error here, no error here. Okay, so we do not have any error because company is defined. We are using L1 of 2, that is nothing but 3, or I can actually give here like Subbu. Okay, now you can see it here. It is going to print Walmart, then Subbu. This exception block 6 and 7, and the last exception block, that is like 8 and except block, basically you can say like 8 and 9, it is not going to be executed. So what will be the output here? The result will be Walmart Subbu. If I'm running this program, here you can see Walmart and Subbu. So this is how the try with multiple except works. Now let me do it differently. The different case I'm just going to tell here is, think about this. Now Python file, I've just given exception handling 5. Something like this, here you can see uh, the program, whatever we have the same program. I want to do it differently. Here I am just giving by the name error or index error. I'm just giving here exception, this one name error and index error, and here I'm just giving you are trying to access some variable or value which is not yet defined yet, something like this. Okay, so now look at here. So I have like an exception block here. Earlier program we are having two exception blocks, name error, one except, index error. Now I am having a piece of code. You are trying to access some variable which is not yet defined. Now company, I'm just going to comment it out. Now look at here, Control Shift F10. If I'm executing this program, you are saying like you are trying to access some variable which is not yet defined. That is well and good. So now if I'm giving like 5 here, I just uncommented, so the error should actually come here, like in this case index error. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing Walmart. You are trying to access some variable value which is not defined. Now you can actually ask me, okay, that's fine, but I want to print this error. What is this error? I want to print it. Then how do I print it? Here I can say print, let's say hyphen 50 times followed by print. I hope we can dump it. So let us see. Print A. Now look at here. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see. What message it is printing? Walmart. You are trying to access some variable value which is not defined. List index is out of range. Look at here, it is printing list index is out of range. You can also capture, let's for example, if I'm giving like this value as 1 and like company, I'm just commenting it out here and running this program. Here you can see the saying you are trying to access some variable which is not defined, name company is not defined. So it is actually printing here. You can also print the exception while handling it. The original exception you can actually print it. You need to capture it like except, then your exception name adds some variable name. It is not E for error. Ideally, all the programmers, developers, they use like short names E or ERR or anything like that. We can actually use like an E or ERR. Let's say, for example, I want to actually use error and I want to use here error. That is also possible. Now running this program, here you can see it's the same thing. E or error depends on you. So that's all about like the program. Like here also no error, here also no error because we have uncommented companies Walmart and like L1 of 1 is actually 1. Now I'm running this program. Now it is saying like Walmart and 2, which is very good. Now in my next program, I'm just going to tell you how do we deal with the unknown errors like exception handling 7 or 6. File, here we go, and then we do have this like here we do have like company equals to Walmart. If I give, if I print something like this, print company plus then L1 of 2, L1 of 2, it is going to print Walmart Subbu. Okay, now execute the program. Here it is saying like no Walmart Subbu. What is going to happen if I'm giving print company plus, let's say here I'm just giving L1 of 1, L1 of 1. Now look at here. This is going to throw some error. Some error we are going to experience because L1 of 1 is 2, which is integer type, a number. Walmart is a string, so we cannot actually concatenate a string with a number, or we cannot do a addition a string with a number. Now if I'm running this program, we are handling only name. If I'm going to execute this, here you can see we are getting like type error because we cannot, the type error here you can see we cannot concatenate string with integer. We cannot concatenate string with integer. So how do we do it? For example, look at here. How do we handle this? The type error. So in that case, we can actually specify. Okay, one moment. We can specify except. Now, if I'm not giving it anything, print some unknown error occurred. Okay, so now print exception some unknown error occurred. I can actually specify it here. Now we can do this like this. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see some unknown error occurred. But if we want to catch the exact error, what we can actually do here, type error. Type error, the charge E, and then we can specify here this operation is not supported. What kind of operation? Operation is G. That's it. If I'm running this program, here you can see this operation is not supported, can only concatenate string, not int to str. So this is how you can actually handle like multiple errors. So far we are familiar with try, except, and except followed by nothing, except followed by specific error, except followed by multiple types of error, and if you are having a exception like all other exceptions, here you can see all other exceptions, you can actually handle it here. That says all other exceptions. Okay, something like this, or else don't specify anything, you can get the complete exception stack. Okay, so that's all about like how the exception handling works in Python, and this is very basics. Now let us understand, we are familiar with try, except, and everything. Now what we are going to learn is like how to use a finally block and else block in the exception. So now let me write a program here, new Python file, exception handling, then program is 7, Python file, I'm just giving it here. Now Walmart Subbu, there is no error occurred here. Let us see it here. company L1 of 2, and if there is any type error, this suppression is not permitted, then I'm just taking this block out. Okay, now I'm having a else block. Now I'm having a else block. In the else block, I do have a code like print. I'm just giving like hello world. Try to understand. If you're able to recollect the else block in the while loop and for loop, when the else block was actually getting executed, when the loop is successful and we are not breaking the loop, in that particular time, else block is going to be executed. Similar case here. If there are no errors raised during the program execution, no exceptions raised during the program execution, the code in the else block will be executed. Think about in this case. Company defined, it is well met. L1 of 1, it is 2, no error. Company L1 of 2, this is well met Subbu, no error. Then here you can see the else block is actually going to be executed. It is going to print like hello world. So now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing the exact same thing what we discussed, Walmart 2, Walmart Subbu, hello world. This is absolutely working fine. Now, if I'm giving this L1 of 0, in L1 of 0, in this case, this is a type error because this operation is not supported. We cannot add or we cannot concatenate Walmart with 1 or we cannot add 1 with Walmart, right? So now, in this case, there will be error occurred. Now here what we can do, L1 of 1 is 2, it is going to print 2. Now in this line number 6, you can see Walmart plus 1, which is going to throw type error. So as soon as it is generating type error, we are going to get this operation is not supported. In the previous attempt, we are getting like hello world, but in this attempt, as we have changed the index, we are going to get we are not going to get the hello world output because the else block is not going to be executed. Now let us look at here. Here you can see Walmart is there, 2 is there, this operation is not supported, that's fine. But here we do not see the else block. That means when to use this else block, you have a exception handling block like try and accept, multiple accepts or single accept or anything. If everything goes fine, let's say you want to send an email, you're working on a reporting application, generating a report and connecting to MySQL database. You must be familiar with the MySQL database, we have actually set up the MySQL database in the previous session and then handle the database errors too, right? So, sorry, database operations too. Nothing doing the database operation, there is a password. Definitely to connect to a database, we need user ID and password. In real time, the password is actually going to expire every 30 days, 90 days, or every 1 year based on the organization policy. Now, today the password got expired, and if the password got expired, then we cannot actually generate the report. If everything is fine, then the statements or the business logic mentioned in the try block will be executed. If everything is smooth, then you can actually put the statement in the else block stating to send an email, this report has been successfully generated and sent to the customer. You can actually put it in the else, under the else block. If you are putting something under the else block and thinking that in case of error it is going to execute, then that is wrong assumption. Don't do that. It should be handled in the except block. So this is the use case of else block. Should try, except, and else. Now I am going to give you one more example, that is try, except, else, and finally. So when the finally block is going to be executed, the same program, but we'll do it differently to understand when the finally block will be executed. So program number 8. Here we go. Now look at here. This is going to throw error, else block is not getting executed. Now I am having a finally block. Print. This will be executed always. Okay, this will be executed always. If there are errors, finally is also going to be executed. If there are no errors, finally is also going to be executed. Try to understand in this case. Try can actually throw some error. If it is throwing some error, else is not going to be executed, but finally will be executed. Try, there is no error in the try block. Both else and finally will be executed. Now in this case, let's say for example, in this case, company plus L1 of 0, definitely error because type error will be raised. So we are not expecting the else block to be executed, but we are expecting the final block should be executed, which is absolutely going to work. Now here you can see we got Walmart 2, then when we are trying to add Walmart plus 2, that operation is not permitted because concatenation is not supported string with int. So this will be executed always, that is coming from our finally block. Now what if I'm just changing this value, let's say for example Walmart Subbu is actually index 2, so I'm just changing it to index 2. So no error at line number 4, no error at line number 5, no error at line number 6, no error. In this case, these three statements will be executed, followed by hello world will be executed, then line number 16 will also going to be executed. Now control shift of 10, if I'm doing this, here you can see it is like Walmart Subbu, hello world, this is part of else block, this is part of finally block. Okay, so now to make it more meaningful, I'm just giving like else block here, and here I'm just giving finally block, finally block. Okay, now let us run the program. Here you can see it is coming from our else block, it is coming from our that's all about the very basic operations of try, except, else, and finally. We will do something to understand what are the combinations allowed. Okay, what are the combinations are allowed here. But before that, we must know like how to raise a custom error. Exception handling, custom error. Python block. Now I'm just giving here, let's say, I'm just giving something like this, year equals to 2025. I'm just giving here if year greater than 2022, year is greater than 22, then I'm just giving raise, exception, what exception, future year is not supported, not supported. Let us see, like now, how do we see this error message? Now control shift of 10, look at here. What it is saying? Exception. Future year is not supported. We are actually throwing the error message. This is kind of, you can define the errors based on certain business logic. Let's say you are trying to spin a server or EC2 instance in AWS, and you don't want to allow the users, let's say anyone can actually execute, pass the parameters, let's say whatever the systems requirements are, like what operating system or what is the RAM size, like what is the storage requirement, everything user can specify in the command line and run the program, and the server is actually going to be spent in the AWS cloud. Now think about if someone is specifying the RAM is actually 8 GB, it is okay. More than 8 GB, you should not support because cost will be associated. You don't actually give any servers which is having capacity more than 8 GB. And you want to actually raise some error messages there. You can specify here like raise exception. So this is not in our cost limit, like this is not in a budget limit, or if you cannot say, you can say like as per the project guidelines you cannot actually go ahead beyond the 8 GB size and all. You can actually define exception like this, something like this. Okay, so now here if I'm actually going to handle this, I can definitely handle this is actually, you can see it here, it is part of exception only, because the custom errors are actually part of exception. Now, if I'm giving here exception, I want to handle this program, then what I can do, I should actually define it in a try catch block. Let's say I'm just giving here try and just giving it here this one, and then sorry, not try catch, it is like a try except block, except all the exceptions. Now print exception test. Okay, now control set of done. Now here you can see some exception raised. We are generating this whenever needed. We can also print it like this, except some exception like this. Okay, exception raised, and we can actually capture this. What if we want to actually do something differently? Let's say here I'm just going to tell integer, sorry, typecasting of input of, and I can specify enter year. Okay, now running the program. Else print here looks good, comma here. Okay, now look at here. So this is how, this is a very small program anyway. So now here you can see control shift of 10. Now I'm just giving here is 2021. We are getting here looks good. Now control shift of 10. Here we want to see 2025 or 2026. You can see some exception, right? Then you can ask me, then without try catch block, can't we do this? We can definitely do it. To adjust the indentation here again. Now here you go. Here is input of this one, executing the program. Here I'm just giving 2020. Here looks good. Run the program again. Give some higher value 2030, and here you can see exception future here is not supported. So this kind of operation is also supported. Like now you can use raise multiple times to define like custom errors, search for your requirement, division by zero, index out of bound, all the errors, whatever there in the exception documentation, everything we can actually handle it programmatically. So that's all about the concepts. Okay, so now let me close this and then tell you the last topic for today, like what are the combinations allowed if I'm giving something like this, let's say something like this, uh, try and print. I'm just giving company or name here. Name is Subbu. I have not defined it. Name. Only try running the program. What is going to happen? Syntax error. Except is needed, or except or finally block is needed. That means we cannot use only try. We can use try with except or try with finally. Let's say try with except we have already done. Now I'm just going to do it using finally. Print hello, hello guest. Okay, now look at here. So now what is going to happen? If I'm running this program, Here it is going to tell hello guest is printing and it is saying name is not defined and we do not have the exception block, and to handle that, that's fine. So this is expected. Now you can tell me, can we use finally block directly? It is already flagging that we cannot use the finally block. What it is saying? Invalid syntax. We cannot use only finally. Okay, so now can we use something like this? Try with else block. Try with else, not at all allowed. Try with else, not at all allowed. Because except and finally is must. You are using try, you have to use except or finally or both. It has to be there. We cannot use try else. Let us go back to Notepad and understand. Try except allowed. Try finally allowed. Try except else is allowed. Try multiple excepts is allowed. Try except multiple times. We have done like program to understand this try except like multiple try except blocks. We can also use that. Then try except else finally. This is also allowed. But if you are giving something like this, let's say try, and here I'm just giving try except sorry, it is small case except, let's say here I'm just giving like name error, print, here I'm just giving name error as e, print error message, some error message here, I'm just giving e. Okay, now if I'm giving else here and print else block, Subbu I'm just giving here, and finally I'm just giving print finally block final block here. Now look at it, name is not defined, it's going to raise the exception, so it is going to print error message. Then else will not be executed, finally block will be actually executed. Now running this program, here you can see error message finally block. What if I'm just taking out this finally block and putting it here? This is again wrong. The flow should be try except else finally, or try except finally, or try except else. But if you're having else and finally, else should be before finally block. Now let us execute and see what is the error message it is saying. It is saying it is invalid syntax. We cannot use try except else finally. Sorry, we can use try except else finally, but we cannot use try except finally and else. Finally and else. So now, what is the correct syntax? The correct syntax is try except else, then final here. Okay, so that's all about exception handling in short. And for very basic understanding on exception handling, I hope after this session you will able to understand the exception handling and start using the exception handling concepts in all the programs whatever you are going to write going forward, whether it's a database program, whether it's a API call, whether it is some operation, file operations, and anything you are going to do, everything you should actually do it using the exception handling itself. So I'm done for the day.